In this module, we are going to focus on Model Context Protocol. MCP is a communication layer designed to provide Claude with context and tools without requiring you, the developer, to write a bunch of tedious code. When you first get started with MCP, you will see diagrams that look like this very often. It shows two major elements of MCP, namely the client and the server. The server often contains a number of internal components, named tools, resources, and prompts. Now, there's a lot of terminology here, so to help you understand all of this, we're going to imagine that we are building a small app and see how MCP fits into it. Our sample app is going to be another chat interface. It's going to allow a user to chat with Claude about their GitHub data. So if a user asks a question like, what open pull requests do I have across all my different repositories? The expectation is that Claude is probably going to make use of a tool to reach out to GitHub, access the user's account, and see what open pull requests they have, maybe open repositories or whatever else. The point here is that we would implement this probably by using a set of tools. Now, one thing I want to mention really quickly is that GitHub has a tremendous amount of functionality. There are repositories, pull requests, issues, projects, and tons of other things. So to have a complete GitHub chatbot, we would really have to author a tremendous number of tools. If we wanted to build that sample app, we would be on the hook for authoring all these schemas and all these functions. And this is all code that you and I, as developers, would have to write, test, and maintain. That's a lot of effort, a lot of burden being placed on us. This challenge of making developers maintain a big set of integrations is one of the primary difficulties that Model Context aims to solve. MCP shifts the burden of defining and running tools from your server to something else called an MCP server. So no longer would you and I have to author this tool right here. Instead, it would be authored and executed somewhere else inside of this MCP server. These MCP servers can really be thought of as like an interface to some outside service. So I might have a GitHub MCP server that provides access to data and functionality provided by specifically GitHub. We're essentially wrapping up a ton of functionality around GitHub and placing it into this MCP server in the form of a set of tools. So at this point, we have a very basic understanding of what a MCP server is. It gives us access to a set of tools that exposes functionality related to some outside service. And the benefit here is that you and I do not have to author all these different tool schemas and functions and so on. Now that we have this basic understanding, I want to address some very common questions that a lot of people have when they first learn about MCP servers. So 3 common questions that seem to always come up. The first common question is, who authors these MCP servers? And the answer is anyone. Anyone can make an MCP server implementation. But very often, you will find that service providers make their own official implementation. So for example, AWS might decide to release their own official MCP server implementation, and inside of it, it might have a wide variety of different tools available for you to use. The second common question is, how is using a MCP server different than just calling a service's API directly? Well, as we just saw, if we wanted to call a API directly, such as GitHub, then we would have to author this tool ourselves. And now we can call GitHub directly. So what did we gain here? Well, all that really changed was we are now having to author the schema ourselves and the function implementation ourselves. So simply by adding in the MCP server, we are saving ourselves a little bit of time. The final common question is more of a common criticism that you're going to see people have around MCP. And this criticism is most often coming from people who don't quite understand what MCP is all about. So very often, you will see people saying MCP and tool use are the same thing. Well, as I have just laid out to you, MCP servers and tool use, they are complementary. They are different things, but they are complementary. The idea behind MCP is that you do not have to author the tool function and the tool schema. That is something that is done for you by someone else and is being wrapped up inside of this MCP server. So at some level, yeah, they're kind of similar because we are talking about tool use in both cases, but MCP servers are really talking about who is doing the actual work. So if you ever see this criticism, again, it's usually because people don't quite understand what MCP is all about.